I'm Dr. Joyce talking to Jim Cathcart, an icon in the speaking industry who has been inducted into the Sales and Marketing Hall of Fame in London, England, and the Speaker Hall of Fame. Quite an accomplishment. Welcome to the show, Jim.
Thank you, Dr. Joyce. Nice to be with you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to have you. You use the phrase intelligent motivation for a challenging world. It's terrific.
Mm-hmm.
What made you think of this, and what does this mean to you? How does it differ from other motivational speakers?
Well, so many people get the wrong reaction to the word motivation. They think of it as something trivial. You know, when you think about motivation, though, it's motive with action. And if there's no motive, then action is senseless. And if there's no action, then the motive is simply a wish. So if you think about motivation intelligently, you realize that it's about activating motives. And I believe that the way to do that is to understand which motives are the ones you should act upon. You know, the deeper, more values-based motives that drive us. That's what leads us in the direction we ought to go. Our simple impulses or temporary temptations, those are hardly really qualified for motive status. You know, those are impulses or urges maybe. And the more intelligent we are about motivation, the more we cause our life to go in the direction we'd like it to end up going.
I like that. You're preaching to the choir. Isn't it true that one cannot motivate someone? They have to motivate themselves?
Exactly, because if you have to have the motive in order for it to be activated, all I can do is stimulate it. I can remind you that something matters. I can show you why it's important. I can appeal to you in a number of ways that make it attractive for you to take action, but I can't motivate you. A person, if you go up to a person and you say, please give me all your money, they say, well, no, I'm not going to give you all my money. Who are you? And you say, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't show you my gun. I'll shoot you if you don't give me all your money. Oh, well, here, have all my money.
Well, that's a great example.
Yeah, it was their motive to stay alive. It wasn't the gun.
Right.
The gun was the threat, but the motive to stay alive was what activated their generosity.
Right. Well, I absolutely think that you stand apart by having this phrase, because I think people don't really understand that there's so many motivational speakers out there, and I'm finding out a lot of people never heard of the people that were known for motivational speaking.
Yeah. A lot of people, even motivational speakers, some of them, and these are my colleagues I'm talking about, so many of them are my good friends, but some of those that don't get it seem to think that telling someone they should be motivated is enough. They'll say, you got to have goals. Well, okay, nice statement. You got to have weather too, but now what? You know, let's get specific, let's get practical here. You got to have goals. Okay. How do I set goals, and how do I know they're the right goals, and how do I get myself excited about the goals I set? You know, that's the deeper level of motivation where it actually causes something to happen. There are plenty of people that can get you excited, tell you, lively stories and get you up on the edge of your seat, and that's fine for the next 35 seconds. You'll love this. I sat on a plane next to a guy years ago, a guy from Australia, and I was in the first row of first class, and I sat down and I looked at him and I said, good morning. He said, g'day. I said, g'day. I said, are you from Australia? He said, right. I said, where in Australia? He said, Perth, West Australia. And I said, what do you do in Perth? He said, I'm in the oil business. And I said, you're in the oil business. Well, very good. And he said, what do you do? I said, I'm a motivational speaker. He said, oh, I don't believe in motivation. I thought this was a very nice way to start a conversation, sarcastically. He said, I don't believe in motivation. I said, why not? He said, it's no good because it doesn't last. And there was a flight attendant standing right by us, and she turned around and she quoted an old line from Zig Ziglar. She said, neither does a bath, but it's still a good idea now and then.
That was great. Very good. I do like that story.
You know, but when you think about it, eating doesn't last. Saying I love you, it's meaningful, but they need to hear it again. exercise doesn't last. Almost nothing in the world lasts. Everything is transitory.
Right.
So it's all in a state of constant evolution. And the fact that motivation doesn't last is a moot point. So what? That doesn't mean that it's a bad idea. It just means that it needs to be refreshed regularly if you're going to stay the path.
Well, I think that sometimes people think, just like a Weight Watchers program, they think if they attend the class, it's done. Same thing with motivation. They think, many people think if they go to a motivational speaker, they'll be motivated. It's not true.
No, but they'll begin the process. You know, that's the nice thing. My role as a motivational speaker, and many times that's the role I'm in,
right,
is to start the process and to give people a path so that they can continue it. So when I talk with them, I talk them through the idea instead of just presenting the idea. And that's what seems to make the difference.
It certainly would. Well, although you are a business strategist, a psychological researcher, and philosopher at heart, as I am, you're also a down-to-earth regular guy and like to enjoy life. Tell us about all the things that you do in your spare time.
Well, I play rock and roll music in nightclubs. My wife and I sing together, and I play guitar and sing classic hits from the baby boom era. I've got friends that play lead guitar, that play drums, that play harmonica, and some that just show up to sing along and do vocals. And a couple times a month we perform at a club here in Thousand Oaks, California, and I've also performed all over the world. Literally, in the last 5 years, I've performed musically in addition to my speeches in Santiago, Chile, Barcelona, Spain, Macau, China, Warsaw, Poland, Austin, Texas, Fairbanks, Alaska, Costa Rica, Caracas, Venezuela, you know, just all over the place.
You still have all your fun. I love that.
Yeah. Years ago, 1990, I was sitting in a restaurant, outdoor restaurant with my wife, and a motorcycle drove by. And I looked at it longingly, you know, kind of going, and she said, why don't you just buy one and get it over with? And I said, thank you. And so the next day I went shopping, and in a few days I had a new motorcycle, and I put probably 150,000 miles on that and its other replacement motorcycles between 1990 and, say, 2010. Toured much of the world, took Paula on the back seat, and we went touring the Alps, 6,000 miles, 2 separate trips, and went to 6 countries, and gosh, we had so much fun with that.
For 4 years in a row now, you've been selected as one of the top 5 speakers on sales and service. I can see why after talking to you for this little while, but in an online survey of over 11,000 people. What do you think makes you stand out from the others?
I think it's the fact that I'm so practical about it. Relationship selling, which I wrote back in the 1980s, became a kind of a common household term. And I wrote the first book by that title, and as far as I know, I'm the first person to popularly use that title in a big way. And the concept of it is that a relationship is a thing. It's a real asset. You know, that the connection between people is something you can intend, you can create, you can cultivate, and you can manage. But most people think of relationships just simply as interaction, and they don't see it as something to be thought about intelligently. And so when it comes to their relationships, they just sort of let them accumulate, and then they do damage control from time to time, and they try to be a nice person and do the right thing, but they're not backing off and thinking about all their relationships in an intelligent way. If you and I look at our lives from, let's say, a helicopter view, we'll notice that there are a specific number of people we're regularly connected with. And you and I tend to be sort of a reflection of the people we most often associate with. So it matters which people we choose to spend the majority of our time with. So if we're more intelligent about who we cultivate relationships with, and if we don't have any people in our circle who, let's say, none of the people we regularly connect with are good with money, we probably don't have much money either. So if we want to be better with money, maybe we should connect with some folks who are good with money and add them to the circle.
Yes.
And if there are people that always drag us down, maybe we should spend less time with them. So the more intelligent you are about who you connect with and how you connect with them and how you communicate over time, the more everything works the way you want it to. And some people say, well, that's just not natural. That's just too clinical. And I disagree, because you already have relatives or friends, associates that you don't particularly enjoy, and you make decisions about where you're going to go based on who's going to be there. So you're already doing this. I'm just saying do it at a higher level and be more intelligent about it, because intelligence in the final analysis is noticing more. So the more you notice about your food, the more you notice about your health, about your relationships, about your business, the more you know. And the more you know, the more options you see, and the person with the most options usually wins.
I know I said this before, but you are so preaching to the choir. I absolutely agree with everything that you say.
Thank you.
One of the hardest things that I have to do as a coach in a business that really doesn't understand that relationships are what counts is the difference between having money being your primary motivator and having relationships being your primary motivator, but they just don't get it.
Well, if you form a relationship with the right person in the right way, you will probably make money. But a lot of people, they say, well, I don't care about money, I care about relationships, and they stay broke for the rest of their life. And they end up dependent on other people. That's because they made it either or instead of 60-40. See, I think that's the deal. You need to understand all these things matter. Money really, really, really matters. Relationships really, really matter. All of those things matter. So each deserves their time. And if you look at what I call the personal priority wheel, where you do a circle with spokes in it, and you have one spoke representing mental things, developing your mind, learning, and so forth, one of them representing your health, one of them representing your relationships, one on money, one on your job, and so forth. When you look at those and you do a ranking on each of those spokes of the wheel and put a little dot between 1 and 10, 10 being the outside of the wheel, 0 being the center, you put a little dot on each wheel. Let's say developing my mind and learning new things, I'm at about a 6 right now. Relationships, I'm at about a 9. Spiritual development, about a 7, and so forth. Then you connect the dots inside the circle. It quickly tells you where you've been putting your attention lately. And if you don't like the shape of that circle, it doesn't tell you where you're strong and weak. It tells you where you've been putting your energy. Just shift the focus temporarily until you've addressed that item and given it its due.
Well, I actually teach that in my personal development courses. I have the wheel, and I do exactly what you're saying, and it does help. But what I was referring to was a lot of people that I speak to as a coach, they don't want to put out any money to learn, and they don't understand that I have to Skype first before I work with a person. I need to know who this person is. I need to know whether the nonverbal communication is there, whether they're passionate about what they want to do. And what I'm figuring out, or it's happening a lot lately, is they call when they don't have any money. And I need to form a relationship with someone first before I can take any money from them.
Well, yeah, and we've got to invest in the resources that will help us grow. You say, well, you got to have money to make money. Well, yeah, but you don't have to have millions to make millions.
No.
You've got to have a few dollars, and you've got to invest them wisely. When I was a clerk at the Urban Renewal Agency in Little Rock, Arkansas, in my 20s, I was making $500 a month, and I had no money in the bank. And I was newly married with a baby at home, and I was out of shape and overweight, and I didn't have a college degree. And my prospects were very, very poor. But I heard Earl Nightingale on the radio one day, and I was inspired by his message. He was a motivational speaker, considered the dean of personal motivation. And he had a little 5-minute radio show, and that day he said, if you will spend 1 hour extra every day studying your chosen field, within 5 years or less, you'll be a national expert in that field. And I did the math in my head. 1 hour a day, 5 days a week, 5 years, that's 1,250 hours. Well,
right.
Study anything for 1,250 hours, you will indeed be an expert on it. So I said, wow, I could do that. And I started investing in me. Now, I didn't have much money, so at first I was reading books I borrowed from friends or the library. I was listening to records and then cassettes and then, other things. And then I signed up for some seminars that were very inexpensive, and I learned things there. And my life started changing direction. Well, within a couple of years, I was a full-time trainer teaching other people's courses. And a couple of years after that, I was writing my own materials, teaching my own courses. And within 5 years, I was a full-time professional speaker flying around the country speaking for thousands of dollars per speech. Now, think about that. The fat, overweight, 2-pack-a-day smoking loser in Little Rock, here's a guy on the radio, and 5 years later, he's getting paid thousands of dollars a speech to stand up in front of a group and tell them how to make their life better.
Good for you. I was born as a baby. I had a fever, and I became vision impaired. I see very little, no peripheral, no depth. I have to take fonts and change them around so I can answer hundreds of emails a day. And everybody says, oh, I can't learn, I can't do anything. And I said, who said so? I'll find a way. And now I'm at the head of my profession, and I am doing radio and writing books. I can't take any excuses from anybody. You are so right. I spent an hour a day reading newspapers and books and excerpts and everything I could and figured out how I can do what I needed to do. And then I did it. So nobody could tell me that something can't be done and they can't do it.
I absolutely concur.
Yeah.
And you're a great example of that.
Well, the interesting thing is that you are now in the same place as Earl Nightingale, the person that you admired so much, as a recipient of the Golden Gavel Award, an award that Art Linkletter and Zig Ziglar, a great man, have won. And you've also received a Cavett Award for a lifetime of service. How did these experiences make you feel?
Oh, it's thrilling and humbling at the same time. The night that I received the Cavett Award, which is the sort of a lifetime achievement award given for service to the profession by the National Speakers Association, that's 4,000 professional speakers. I was in Dallas, Texas, and Cavett Robert himself, the guy who the award is named after, the founder of the group, he presented the award to me, and I walked to the front of the room, and I looked out at an assembly of about 1,400 professional speakers. And I said, when I was a little kid, I used to sit in my living room with Mom and Dad and eat hot, fresh, homemade chocolate chip cookies and watch People Are Funny on the television starring Art Linkletter. And tonight I'm standing here in front of all of you, and in the second row is Art Linkletter watching me. Said, ladies and gentlemen, and Art stood up and took a bow, and everybody applauded him. And I said, this is one of the most powerful moments of my entire life. I said, you've honored me with the award, and I promise to honor you with my behavior.
That is great. That's a wonderful way to pay him back and anyone else who nominated for the award. You also received the Lifetime Achievement Award in 2003 and later one of the Legends of the Speaking Profession. And that's not all. Tell us about your other achievements, Jim.
Well, I've been privileged to be in the field of professional speaking and training during the time when the human potential movement emerged and grew to its peak over the years. We used to call the whole area of motivation and self-improvement the human potential movement in this country. And so it's kind of like I took up surfing the day the waves got bigger. And so I was able to meet Earl Nightingale and Zig Ziglar and get to be friends with Zig and go to church with him and his wife Jean in Dallas and hang around with people like Cavett Robert and Art Linkletter and such. And so I've just been absolutely blessed. But, I've also worked my buns off. I've paid my dues in doing all the things I needed to do to learn the next skill, to get better at whatever, and to listen to my audience and my customers and to stop and improve every time I could. In 1972, when I heard Earl Nightingale on the radio, I had never given a speech. I mean, except in speech class in high school. And I decided a few weeks later I wanted to do what he was doing. Mm-hmm. So I decided to become a national expert in the field of personal development. But I didn't know what that meant. I just knew that it felt like the right thing for me. So I became fanatical, literally fanatical, about personal development. All I wanted to do, talk about, be around, or read was personal development. I wanted to learn time management and strategic thinking and goal setting and interpersonal communication and leadership skills and, all the things that would lead to a person being more effective in life. And so I did that just fanatically to the point that some of my friends started saying, let's don't invite Jim. He's going to want to talk about motivation. And other people were attracted to me, and so my circle of friends evolved and reinforced my new choices. And so my growth accelerated. And over time, I got more and more involved. I ended up being a salesman selling Earl Nightingale's motivational materials door to door to businesses in Little Rock, Arkansas, where I grew up. And I did that for a couple of years, and then I started my speaking business, moved to Tulsa, Oklahoma, and then I ultimately moved to La Jolla, California, San Diego, and partnered with a college professor, Tony Alessandra, and he left the university and came in with me. And for 5 years, we grew a business as speakers and trainers, and we co-authored books and audio albums, and we started hitting some real home runs, had some bestsellers.
He's a good guy. I know him, and he's a wonderful man.
He and I are very close friends, best friends. I'm the executor of his will. He's the executor of mine. But Tony and I were together in La Jolla until 1985, and then we went back to being separate businesses, but still friends. And during that time, I got a phone call. Tony's sitting at his desk. I'm sitting at mine. Phone rings. I picked it up, and it was Earl Nightingale.
Oh, no.
And he said, may I speak to Jim Cathcart? And I said, I couldn't think of anything to say. I said, this is he, finally. And he said, my name's Earl Nightingale, and I read an article of yours that I think would make a good audio album. And I said, well, sir, believe me, I know who you are. And the article you're talking about already is an audio album that Dr. Alessandra and I did. And he said, well, send it to me. We might want to publish it. So we sent it to him. This was 1984. And Nightingale Conant decided to publish the album, Relationship Strategies. And they published it, and in the next 2 years, they sold $3.5 million worth of that album worldwide.
Well, it's a great album. I have it. I own it, and I recommend it to my clients.
Thank you very much.
It definitely is something that people need to read. Your passion, and this is something I always try to strive to people, you're being passionate about this made you what you are today. And all those accomplishments came from that passion. So I think passion is a very important word. You have to have that in order to push forward.
And everyone does. Everyone has passion about something. A lot of times the passion is dormant, because we get into routines where we place making ourselves comfortable ahead of making ourselves content and happy and fulfilled inside. And so we end up in a routine of watching lots of television, just not getting out and doing much. We say, I don't want to get involved. Well, if we don't get involved in various ways, if we don't cause ourselves to break the inertia of inaction and start connecting with other people and showing up at places where we're not sure whether it's going to be fun or not, then nothing happens. But if we do, if we break that seal and we take that first step, we find a lot of things turn out to be some of the greatest experiences of our life. And that's how you grow. Is you gotta step outside that front door and walk to the edge of the jogging path. Otherwise, you're never going to take the first step.
I'm all so much about Maslow's chart, because if people don't reach self-actualization, they'll never know what they could have accomplished, and it's never too late to do what you might have done. And that's what people don't get. nothing would stop me. People tried to stop me, get in my way, say, you can't do this, you can't do that. Why not? You're not the boss of me. I can do anything I choose to do. And so I just love your enthusiasm. I love what you've done. Honestly, Relationship Selling is one of the best books I've ever read for people to become more motivated for a challenging world, and it certainly is a challenging world. This is an amazing interview, and you have done amazing things in your life to help others. Thank you so much for being our guest today on ImageMaker Media.
No, it's my pleasure, Dr. Joyce. Thank you.
To reach Jim Cathcart, go to www.jimcathcart.com.